And here I'm going to hand over my microphone to Lee. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hope Lee, and I'm founder of DeFi Korea and Celo Korea. It's like a non-profit collective focused on evangelize DeFi in Web3, also Web2. And hi, Rene, welcome to Korea. And can you briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. My name is Rene. I'm the co-founder of Celo. It's a blockchain that's looking to advance real-world use cases, and long-time fan of Korea. I lived here, studied abroad here, so it's great to be back.
Yeah, Rene, so when was the last time you were in Korea, and what's the purpose of this trip?
Yeah, no, this is actually the first time since the pandemic. So remember back in 2019, we came out, I think we came out twice actually. In February, we hosted our first community meetup. It was still before mainnet launch. And the network has been up and running for over 3 years. Almost 300 million transactions processed. Lots has happened since.
Yeah, Celo is known as the home of DeFi. DeFi means regenerative finance, with over 10,000 projects in more than 150 countries. Celo also works with an impressive roster of partners like Google Cloud, a recently announcement to launch a validator. Tell us more about this partnership.
Yeah, and I think I actually have a slide. Let me see if I can go to that. So Google Cloud recently announced they're going to run validators for the Celo network, which is the first time they're doing this for an EVM chain. So it's really big announcement, and I think exciting for the Celo community to see that. We've always had a very active validator set with many grassroots, smaller validators all around the world, but then also big organizations like Deutsche Telekom, for example, which has been running validators for a long time. So yeah, that was a really great announcement, and we're looking to partner with them on a bunch of different initiatives, including around refi, which you mentioned.
Yeah, during EthCC in Paris, there was even a DeFi Day at Celo's cooperate event with Chainlink. What do you think about DeFi? Is there a future? I believe DeFi and Celo is the future.
I'm glad you bring it up. So, for those of you who don't know, refi stands for regenerative finance. It's kind of a mashup of regenerative economics principles and decentralized finance. And if you want to explain it to a friend over drinks, the easiest way to do that is to basically say, hey, imagine a financial system where there are positive externalities, with everything you do for either the planet or your community or maybe even the individual. And that's been really a core guiding principle for us working on Celo, even before the term refi itself was sort of a term people were using to refer to the space. It's fascinating because there's a long history of sort of different experiments and economic theory that falls sort of broadly in that category. And for a long time, these things were kind of far-fetched dreams, and they're now becoming a reality. And we can maybe give some examples to that in this talk.
Oh, thank you. Can you explain the Celo's vision? Because the Celo's vision is really nice, cool. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, I actually had a slide on that too.
Sorry.
So really the idea was to say, hey, this technology is so powerful and I think a lot of people who came into the space from the very early days, right, saw this as a way to really democratize access to financial tools, to really the economy, digital economy. And in reality, that red road has been harder, and not necessarily because where we were waiting for some crazy new zero-knowledge technology, but because stuff that happens in the real world, like cash in, cash out, right? The ability to seamlessly, as a regular person, to actually use the stuff that we're building. And so a guiding sort of North stuff was always, okay, let's design systems that are inclusive and really this kind of building for all and building with purpose. Sort of Celo itself is an Esperanto word and means a purpose, and we did that on purpose, as I like to say. Yeah.
Oh yeah. What are the real-world use cases that you excited about?
Actually brought a couple of examples with me. This one is pretty fresh. So for those of you who've spent time, or actually there's a bunch, maybe like taking a step back, there's a bunch of different, have been a bunch of different experiments involving community currencies all around the world, even pre-Bitcoin. And Will Ruddick and the team from Grassroots Economics have been working on community currencies for, I think, a decade, maybe more. And it's really interesting because they started with paper vouchers. So imagine you're a business and you're maybe, let's say you run a car mechanic shop, and you're trusted in the community. People know you do good work. Why not write on a piece of paper like, oh, here, this is worth 5 hours of my time, of my work. And then hand that paper to someone, right? I mean, that someone has a car problem, they can come to you and redeem the paper, and you actually have ability to get some cash now for a service you do in the future. And in fact, the person you give that piece of paper to, they may actually give that piece of paper to a neighbor, right, to buy something else. And so you could imagine these vouchers circulating in a community and really creating liquidity. In a way, this is mutual credit, right? And so beautiful concepts in terms of also a community powering itself and kind of keeping the wealth that it generates within the community. But in reality, very hard to implement, especially at a large scale. And so over the years, Grassroots, as they were building their systems, went from paper vouchers to databases to private blockchain, and very recently deployed on Celo mainnet, public blockchain infrastructure. And it's really powerful because now that really unlocks the next stage of growth of imagining something happening in one community, happening in other communities, liquidity pools between different communities, and sort of at an aggregate, each community can take all these vouchers and effectively have something that resembles a community currency where I'm happily trading sort of an aggregate voucher that represents the services of the community. So if you want to play with that, this is a live dashboard where you can go in and sort of, if you click on the lines here, these are transactions, so they take you directly to the block explorer, and you can see when you click on the dots, right, each voucher, how many vouchers are outstanding. Is that car mechanic, has he sold 10,000 vouchers, and is that going to be a problem maybe when all those cars break down at the same time? That's a joke. But yeah, there's some cool stuff in terms of really seeing directly the benefits of these kind of products being deployed on public blockchain infrastructure, and with it the ability to scale, but also facilitating how this plugs into the existing economy, right? For example, allowing people to off-ramp their community currency to M-Pesa, right? This is in Kenya. So yeah, really interesting, and one aspect to me of sort of this, if you take regenerative economics, right, a great example of implementing that in the real world. I think I have a few more here. Good Dollar has done a fantastic job. They've built a community of over 500,000 members that are once a day claiming a daily dividend, or basic income if you want. And obviously the individual amounts are quite small, but to me actually that's only almost like a side point of their product. What they've done is they've created really a bottoms-up identity layer, because now other projects, protocols can go to them and say, hey, I want to I want to expose my product to your community, and We know these are real people because once a day they come in, they claim their daily good dollar, and in a way that's really powerful because users can sort of opt in into what they share, right? What they want to participate in, and it's kind of a building block in a much bigger public goods infrastructure that ultimately contributes to this regenerative ecosystem. Let's see, impact market, very interesting. Started similarly as a platform or decentralized platform for distributing UBI. The idea here being that we all here could pay money into a smart contract, and that smart contract distributes those funds to individuals in the community, and not just one community, but communities all over the world, many markets, and do that according to some criteria, right? And so you have, if you think about this from a cash transfer funding perspective, you really have a transparency that is unheard of in sort of traditional giving. But more importantly, also this, is creating an identity layer that now Impact Market Labs and some of the products they're building around this are providing even more value to people participating here. They've started to do microcredit with some pretty amazing success in terms of repayment rates and just money kind of flowing in the community, and that's really encouraging because these are uncollateralized loans, right? So these are not your the compound loans, but these are folks that for the first time ever now have access to credit at very reasonable interest rates, and it's happening in communities all around the world, particularly in the global south. So yeah, another really exciting project. I give one more example, then we go back to the questions.
Nice.
This one, I think sometimes people are like, oh, impact, it's like, okay, there's impact and there's all the other stuff, but I like it best when those kind of worlds melt, right? And here FC Barcelona did something really clever. They said, hey, we know there's a lot of people using plastic bottles at the games and kind of feel bad about that, and we want to do something to start changing that, and even creating awareness for that and shifting maybe behavior over time. And so for folks here familiar with carbon offsets, right, you could imagine a very similar concept to a voluntary carbon credit, almost like a voluntary plastic credit. And in this case, it's a certificate that has monetary value around 1 ton of plastics being recycled. But to make it fun, the plastics team actually, let's see if I have it here, basically had these certificates tied to a picture of a cute animal, so NFT, and effectively Barcelona fans were buying NFTs that had real-world purpose, real-world impact, right, by actually creating a monetary, kind of a price for plastic recovery. So really cool to see sort of those worlds melt, and personally, I'm a fan of solutions that kind of really reach a mass audience and that can allow people that where that may not be front and center, right, to take positive action for their community or positive climate action, right, for the planet, with their everyday action.
Nice. The other big news of EDCC in Paris, Celo's proposed migration to on Ethereum layer 2. What does this proposal entail, and what's Celo's specific strategy to win in layer 2?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think about it less of like winning, but rather like how do we create even more momentum around refi, around how do we scale that real world impact. Let me see if I have some slides on this too somewhere here and here. Actually, this one is interesting. There are many questions like, why are you doing this? And my favorite answer here is, well, if Ethereum, 6 years ago when we started working on Celo, if Ethereum had been then what it is now, right? I don't know if we would have chosen the path of a standalone layer 1. But at the time, this was really the right path to have the kind of performance, the kind of features that enable these real-world use cases. And it's interesting to see a lot of the things that we kind of initially built, or sort of the way we modified, kind of the Geth as we forked it, have now become much more widely adopted and by other, by sort of other things that have launched, and even Ethereum. And I think a lot of that is now, we're now at a point where we're like, okay, there's a lot of applications, a lot of people in the broader Ethereum ecosystem that share our values and that actually are rowing in the same direction. And so to me, I really think of this much more as a homecoming moment. And the architecture too is, the core team has spent a bunch of time thinking through the design and thinking about, okay, how do we actually do something that keeps all the benefits, all the things that people love about Celo. And when I say people, really people building applications on Celo, but ultimately also the way it's impacting end users, for example, through subcent fees and the ability to pay for gas with for example, stablecoins, tokens on Celo, right? These are important features when you think about the end user experience. And then most importantly, we have a very engaged validator set. We mentioned Google joining as a validator, which is awesome. But then also around the world, really a lot of very strong teams and companies that some of them have been with us since pre-mainnet. And so as we were coming up with some of these ideas for what this could look like, it became clear to us, they could actually play a really important role in basically becoming sequencers and having sort of a design here that has a decentralized sequencer. So yeah, for everyone interested, to learn more about that, I know we probably don't have time to go into all the details here, but there's a forum post on the Celo forum. The core team announced it at ECC, and then after that there was a temperature check vote that was passed with really record participation. So our whole community is really excited, and I know many people in the Ethereum community are also very excited.
Yeah. Cool. As mentioned by Hasef from Dragonfly Capital, Celo has impressive user and transaction growth. What is driving Celo activity? And Nonsense chain products also show that Celo has among the highest growth on monthly basis for activity addresses, more than Polygon, Optimism, and Arbitrum. So what do you attribute these to?
Yeah, I'm sort of preparing for this talk. I went and actually looked at the Nansen dashboard and I pulled the latest numbers. And it's really interesting because and this is for the last 6 months. It looks similar if you go last 3 months or other time frames. But what's interesting here is Celo still in terms of active addresses is behind other ecosystems like Arbitrum, Optimism, but the active address growth, especially in this time frame during this bear market, has been really strong. And I looked in, I was like, okay, what are the applications that are driving this? And where I kind of landed was, okay, this is really driven by applications such as the ones that I showed you, like Good Dollar and others that actually are in the communities where there's some real world utility, whether it's microcredit or micropayments, and for the most part where the people using these products don't actually care in that moment whether Bitcoin is at $25,000 or $50,000, right? So it's not I think the sort of macro sort of numbers you see often for the space in terms of the waves of adoption. Right, they're often very much driven by DeFi trend, NFT trend, right, and people coming in trying out something new. But this is much more sort of steady growth, kind of like more similar to what you would see from a traditional SaaS product, right? That sort of is just growing week over week, months over months. And to us, it's very encouraging because I think that for the builders, right, it's kind of much easier to calibrate, right? They can look what's working and tweak it a little bit, make it just a little bit better, right? And ultimately, I think as a community, that's very much the mantra, right? Like looking at, okay, how can we provide more utility to the users that ultimately should get a benefit from this? So that's, I think, that's really the secret behind this growth. And it's also when I look at where, for example, at the Celo Foundation, where I sit, where we spend our time, it's really talking to the builders that have built some of these applications that are driving this growth and understanding, okay, how do we unlock more growth, right? How do we help folks be more successful? Oh, okay, for example, there's a country maybe where the on-ramp kind of experience is too expensive, right? It doesn't make sense for people to cash into tokens because they're just losing too much on that, right? And okay, is there a way for us to support them, help in the ecosystem, find other partners that can bring down the cost, right? So that's a typical thing that I, for example, spend time on. But it's these small tweaks that end up having a big impact whether someone uses a product or not, and that's maybe also for builders in the room something to know and just be aware of as you're building in Web3.
Okay, it's now. Why do you think Korea is important?
Well, first off, big news. Celo Korea, we just was kind of through a on-chain proposal and funding was launched, and thank you for proposing and actually starting the effort here. I think so. I'm a little biased personally, as I spent time here, like when I was much younger studying here, and even then I was just so impressed by how much technology is embraced, and I feel like every day here you just walk through the streets and you can see something new that you haven't seen anywhere. And there's a lot of appetite to try new things, and very kind of technology savvy population, but also, and this is I think where we've talked about refi earlier. I think it's one of the countries where at the corporate level, ESG is top of mind for many leaders, and it's something that I think is already a boardroom conversation, where in many other countries it's not yet, right? It's something that like some shareholder brought up, and okay, we have to talk about it, but here it's really something that people want to think about. And then at an individual level, right, the willingness to support others, right, the willingness to give, right, being among the biggest kind of contributors to organizations like UNICEF, right, and I think just generally sort of a culture of supporting each other, I think, fits really well with the Celo mantra, but also I think makes for a very interesting community, right? To not just think, okay, what can we do in Korea for Korea, but how can Korea have an even bigger impact on the world, and some of the solutions that are being built. So I'm personally planning to spend a lot more time out here going forward now that the pandemic is past us, behind us. I'm excited for everything that Celo Korea is doing.
Thank you. The next question is almost the same. Will you continue to focus on Korea as a hub of Asia?
100%. I mean, one thing I've also, like, even just at this conference, I've had some really interesting conversations with folks from, for example, Thailand, Vietnam, and I think there's really, I think each market has sort of its own characteristics, but I do see, compared to, when I came last to the region 4 years ago, pre-pandemic, there's really, the questions are, okay, what kind of applications can be built? What kind of applications can be used in market? Like, how do we use this for payments or allowing people to get access to work? So the conversation really has been shifting towards real-world use cases. So I think as a whole, I'm hoping to also bring some of the learnings from other markets, and I think that can be sort of nice to have builders in Asia cross-pollinate with maybe builders in Africa, Latin America, what's happening in Europe and the US, and I think that's the power of this industry as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Every question is done. Anything else?
No, thanks all for coming. I know this is the
Yeah.
last session, so
Yeah.
yes, thanks for showing up. Happy to stick around for a few questions after. Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a long afternoon session, but thanks for staying. And once again.